The Pixelmon team has finally updated to Minecraft 1.21. They've released a stable version, version 9.9, as well as a few other beta updates not yet marked as stable. In this video, we'll cover everything that happened in the alpha versions of Pixelmon on the 1.20 Minecraft versions. So the Pixelmon team actually started working on updating to newer versions of Minecraft back in 2023. The first alpha for Minecraft 1.20.1, version 9.2.0, was released on August 23rd, 2023. Keep in mind, Pixelmon's 1.16.5 version updated the same day to version 9.1.7, so both the 1.16 and 1.20 versions were being worked on at the same time. Minecraft 1.21 wouldn't even be announced until the following October. Just a week later, the 9.2.1 alpha was released to deal with some critical fixes and also added the Ice Gym and the Fairy Gym. The Fairy Gym had just been added to version 9.1.7, and the Ice Gym would be added in the next 1.16 update, so these weren't exclusive to the alpha versions. The 9.2.2 alpha, released September 8th, 2023, is when features separate from the 1.16 version started getting added. There were two main things for this update: support for Terralith and spawn replacement. Terralith support just means that wild Pixelmon would now be able to spawn in the biomes that the Terralith mods and data packs added. So you'll find Pixelmon spawning even in Terralith's Amethyst Rainforest biome and the Volcanic Crater biome. Spawn replacement is just Pixelmon's method for replacing Minecraft's mobs with Pokemon. So this 9.2.2 update made it so that frogs would be replaced by frog Pokemon, tadpoles would be replaced by tadpole Pokemon, and so on to most of the new mobs since 1.16. Axolotls, camels, goats, glow squids, owls, and sniffers. Version 9.2.3 released October 10th, 2023, and added more biome support, shader support, and normal map support. Incendium and Nullscape, which are made by the same team behind Terralith, update the Nether and End biomes, and it was support for them that was added this update. Obviously, as you can see, Pixelmon works with the shaders that everyone is accustomed to, the ones that create directional lighting and shadows. The shader support added in this update just allows cool effects to apply to Pixelmon. Specifically, this update made it so that boss Pokemon, which previously used to be tinted different colors, now have this glow effect around them, which is of course based on the rarity of the boss. This effect also applies when you Dynamax or Gigantamax your Pokemon. The normal map support refers to allowing Pokemon to look more 3D through their textures. The example that the Pixelmon team provides is Iron Leaves. It's a small quality of life thing that will probably be great for people making custom textures, but may not be something you immediately notice. Besides these, version 9.2.3 added spawn replacement for Minecraft's Vex mod so that ghost Pokemon replace it, and a bunch of stuff that are currently already in the 1.16 versions, like TMs and the Steel Gym Town. Version 9.2.4 of Pixelmon marked the start of the alphas in Minecraft's 1.20.2 version. Released on October 15th, 2023, 9.2.4 was mostly fixes and contained some new items that were also later added to the 1.16 versions. The biggest change was to the Stench, White Smoke, and Quick Feet abilities, which added the field effect that those abilities have in the main games. So just like Infiltrator, Stench, White Smoke, and Quick Feet all will decrease the spawn rate of Pokemon when the player has a Pokemon with one of those abilities at the front of their party. Version 9.2.5 was released on November 2nd, 2023, and thus was mostly a lot of the Halloween content, new Pokemon, new items, new abilities, and new palettes that were added into the latest 1.16 update, which was 9.1.8. The new features exclusive to this 1.20.2 version were new shaders and making it possible to data pack which biomes affected the sunny weather that could start due to the biomes and time of day a battle started in. You can apply these shaders to Pixelmon's shader Pokespec, or by just giving the name of the shader when you try to spawn or give a Pokemon. This update added the Rainbow shader, the Black and White shader, and the Cell shader. Other notable changes were the removal of Pixelmon's Amethyst items and blocks, since Amethyst had been added to vanilla Minecraft in 1.17, and new specs and more requirements for the statues that you can place down with the statue editor. Version 9.2.6 was released on December 31st, 2023, and the big 1.21.1 only feature from this version was the addition of the Christmas palettes and the Elf palettes. And yeah, while these palettes are just the Pokemon with a red or green Santa hat, the more important thing here is why the palettes were added and how they work. Because these palettes aren't just normal palettes, they're actually two different models connected together. And the special mechanic of Scarlet and Violet, terrestrialization, creates a Terrajewel above each Pokemon's head. So if the Pixelmon team is working to make every Pokemon capable of wearing a hat, then they are likely working towards implementing terrestrialization. And that is the big thing of this update. Besides that, there's a new bone debug mode, which you as a player should never need because it's probably for debugging those Pokemon hats, but it is fun to see the wacky ways that Pixelmon can be rendered. This update also gave us the party faint respawn game rule. Enabling it means that if all your Pokemon faint, you will also die. You'll go all the way back to your respawn, and just like dying normally, will lose all your items. So for any of you that wanted to play Pixelmon in a more hardcore format, this is for you. And like all game rules, this is going to be enabled at the world creation screen or by using commands. Additionally, if you ever use a Minecraft map, any blocks added by Pixelmon will now show up, and the old Pixelmon anvil, which hasn't been used to make Pokeballs since 1.12, was finally removed, and there are of course lots of bug fixes and changes to the configs that we don't need to go over here. The rest of 9.2 to 6 was mostly keeping parity with the 1.16 versions by adding new Pokemon and more structures like the Water Gym Town and these yacht boats. From here on, the last few alpha updates slow down a bit. Pixelmon version 9.2.7 doesn't come out until 3 months later, on April 9th, 2024. And this is one of the biggest updates of all the alpha versions because it includes the rework to NPCs. Now, how NPCs work changed a lot in this update, but most of the changes were upgrades to the creation of the NPCs, which if you're not a map maker, you won't really need to know. The NPC editor was given a facelift, and you can now do new things with it, such as make NPCs immovable or change them to be children. NPCs can now also be Pokemon, so you could create a Mewtwo NPC to have a conversation with, or build a map where all the Pokemon centers have Chanseys instead of Nurse Joys. Everything that NPCs used to be able to do can now be done while looking like a Pokemon. This update also added all the new Pokemon items, abilities, and structures that were added in the 9.1.11 version for 1.16.5. And then there were also some minor changes so that via data pack, you can configure what Pokemon can be used in Sky Battles and what items a Pokebag can hold. The next alpha, version 9.2.8, which came out a month later on May 18th, 2024, added more Pokemon, which are in the 1.16 versions, but also added new items not in the 1.16 versions. New spawn replacement, new palettes, a rework to PCs, and the ability to switch your point of view in battles. First off, the new items are the different types of mochi, which are used to increase a Pokemon's EVs, the 4 colors of nectar, which change Oricorio's form, and the metal alloy, which allows Duraludon to evolve into Archaludon. The mochi can now be found by defeating a Pecharunt. The nectar can't be obtained in survival yet, and the metal alloy dropped from Metagross, Magierna, Kingambit, and Archaludon. The spawn replacement I mentioned is simply that if a dolphin were ever to spawn, say from a spawn egg, a Finizen or a Palafin will spawn instead. The new palettes I mentioned are the Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter palettes for Sprigatito, Florigato, and Meowscarada. The PC has been reworked to have more of the functionality from the main Pokemon games. There are new panels on the left and right side of the boxes that appear when you hover your cursor over one of your Pokemon. On the left, we have most of a Pokemon's basic info, but on the right, we get some of the more detailed stuff like the EVs and IVs, Pokemon's nature, and even their size and the ribbons they have. The rework also added a bunch of new ways to select your Pokemon. There is now a multi-box view mode, which allows you to swap between boxes quickly, and also allows you to move Pokemon between boxes super quickly. There's this multi-select mode, which allows you to select multiple Pokemon individually, or just drag and select the Pokemon group next to each other. And last, the held item mode from the games, for only selecting your Pokemon's held items, has been added. The search menu still exists, of course, and a new button was added to the hotbar to sort the current box you're looking at. So you can sort it by dex number or by shininess. A really nice feature of this rework is that you can now use Control-Z and Control-Y to be able to undo and redo any actions you take. And there are even more keybinds to make navigating the PC much quicker. So all the previous modes have shortcuts to enable them, and you can also use A to go to the previous box and D to go to the next box, and Control-Tab to switch between any two boxes. The last part of the 9.2.8 update is a small feature to switch your point of view in battles. So there are two parts of this. The first part is, while in battle, if you press F5, instead of looking down at the battle from above, the camera will switch to what your actual Minecraft character sees. Pressing F5 once again will switch to your Pokemon's perspective, which can be pretty funny with really small or really tall Pokemon. Pressing F5 again will bring you back to the default battle camera. The second part of this is you can now effectively pause or leave Pokemon battles and come back to them later. So while in battle, if you press R again, or whatever key you use to send out your Pokemon, you regain control of your Minecraft character and can just move around. You can send out your other Pokemon, check on that chicken you were cooking, or even just get really close-up view of the Pokemon in the battle. The restrictions on this are that you can't start more than one battle, and if you walk too far away, you'll forfeit the battle. When you're done, just press R again while selected on the Pokemon you have in battle in order to return to the battle. And as part of these changes, you can also press F1 while in battle to cycle through different amounts of transparency applied to the battle menu. Version 9.2.9. Version 9.2.9 was released on October 15th, 2024, so a 5-month break since the version 9.2.8 update. In that time, the Pixelmon team added the Gimme Gold coin, a new slippery ice block, curry spawns, and reworked the Pokémon Editor. This update also added a bunch of Pokemon that were added in the most recent 1.16 version, which was the 9.1.12 update. The Gimme Gold coin is, of course, meant to help evolve a Gimme Gold into a Golden Go and works just like in Scarlet and Violet. This update took the previous way Gimme Gold evolved via a linking cord and amulet coin, and instead replaced it with the same mechanic that Melton uses to evolve into Melmetal. Anytime you feed a Gimme Gold coin, or even an entire stack of Gimme Gold coins, a number in the Gimme Gold's summary screen updates. Once that number reaches 99, the Gimme Gold will be able to evolve. And Gimme Gold coins won't be something you can find in treasure chests or in dungeons. You'll just have to defeat wild Gimme Gold or Golden Go to collect them. Gimme Gold in their chest form can drop up to 77, Gimme Gold in their roaming form can drop up to 20, and Golden Go will drop between 10 and 50 Gimme Gold coins. The Slippery Ice block is a new block exclusive to version 9.2.9 and the following versions. There isn't much to say about it other than it works similar to the sliding ice puzzles that Pokemon games have. You'll just keep sliding in the direction you started once you walk on it. You also won't be able to escape its special effect and therefore cheat puzzles by jumping. Pretty simple, and it even affects Pokemon. And you can craft it in survival, so this is the recipe to make it with blue ice and an ice gem or a never melt ice. Continuing on, curry spawning is another new feature not available in 1.16. Similar to cooking curry in Sword and Shield, if you make a good enough curry, a Pokemon will spawn and join your team. Finding Pokemon this way is a bit unique. The better you make your curry, the more likely the spawn Pokemon is to have better IVs, and the more likely the Pokemon's nature should be compatible with the type of curry you are cooking. The best reason to partake in cooking curry, though, is that this is the only way to obtain Pikachu in any of its cosplay outfits. These Pikachu have a super low chance to spawn, but which one spawns coincides with a specific flavor, so you can work towards the one you want by making specific flavor curries. I will say be careful though, since just like in Sword and Shield, Pokemon will only join your team if you are carrying Pokeballs, Great Balls, or Ultra Balls. If you don't have those balls but have other types, they just won't even appear. And with most Pixelmon mechanics, this new feature has its own config options. So, for example, you can make it so the Pokemon that spawns starts a battle with you. The rework to the Pokemon Editor may not be something you end up using often, but paired with the rework to NPCs, it's a nice enhancement to Pixelmon's map-making capabilities, because the Pokemon Editor is what is now used to edit an NPC's Pokemon team. So, similar to the 1.16 version of the Pokemon Editor, using it will bring up a menu of the current Pokemon team, updated to include some more info. Each Pokemon can still be dragged around to reorder them, and there are new buttons on the screen. A randomize button to generate a random team of 6 Pokemon, and a reset button, which will undo every change you have made, so long as you don't exit the menu. So, in Creative, you can randomize your team as much as you want, just to see what you would get, and still press reset to go back to your original team. Adding a new Pokemon to your team will always give you a level 5 Quagsire, which is a reference to the emojis that the Pixelmon Discord uses. The PokePaste tab is still available, so you can quickly share a team you made with your friends via the PokePaste website. It's a bit prettier, but nothing super new here. Editing the Pokemon is where most of the rework was done. The opening page, the Summary tab, has a much cleaner layout and now renders the Pokemon you are editing. There are also new options to change a Pokemon's Pokémon status, make it an egg, and edit whether the Pokemon can be traded or used in a daycare. There are even some smaller things like hovering over the species name will give you the Pokédex description. There is this new reinitialize button, and we will come back to that later. Next, the Battle tab has most of what you would expect. All of the previous stuff from 1.16.5 is there, but with the additional capability to edit the current HP, the status condition, the Dynamax level, and the PP of a Pokemon's moves. Hovering over some of these will give a tooltip giving the in-game description. What I find most helpful is that the rework added an autocomplete feature that also shows whether the move or ability can actually be learned by the Pokemon. So overall, great changes. The Stats tab is, as expected, your Pokemon stats, but with even more stuff to edit and more visual upgrades. The nature received from a mint, the IVs gained via hyper training or bottle caps, and the type of the Pokemon's hidden power can all now be edited. If the Pokemon's hyper trained IVs are maxed out, the silver bottle cap changes to a golden one. The nature affecting a Pokemon's stats is shown via the red and blue highlights on the left. If you don't know which color represents what, hovering your cursor over the text will tell you, and the same goes for some of the other text in this tab. At this point, we can go back to that reinitialize button. This is, in a sense, a randomize button. The current Pokemon species, form, gender, and level won't change, but other values will, including the Pokemon's moves and its stats. So it's not a complete randomizer. The Pokemon's moves and ability will still be what it can actually learn. The Ribbon tab is, predictably, for editing the ribbons and marks on a Pokemon. Adding and removing ribbons is as simple as clicking on them, and hovering your cursor over the ribbons will display their name. This highlight around the ribbon or mark indicates that the Pokemon is currently using it for its title. So this Pikachu will be called Pikachu, the Chosen One. So nothing super special is done here, but it is nice to be able to edit the ribbons visually and also see just how many ribbons there are in the game. The last tab, the PokePaste tab, is almost identical to the one I've already shown, but here it's merely for editing or sharing only the Pokemon that's currently being edited. One last fun fact, pressing F1 while using the Pokemon Editor will turn off and on some of the colors, but other than that, that covers everything about the Pokemon Editor. Besides these new additions, there were some other minor changes. The picket fence has been removed. Max raid dens that spawn underwater now give the conduit power effect to nearby players, which should make it easier to not drown before and after the raid. And Pixelmon has updated their keybinds to be more organized and even added new ones for battles. So now you can play battles without the need of your mouse and potentially even with a controller. All right, finally, we have arrived at the last of the alpha updates. Version 9.2.10 made for Minecraft 1.20.2. This last alpha was released on December 11th, 2024, meaning the alpha version spanned almost a year and a half of development. Version 9.1.13 had recently been released, so as usual, the update kept parity with that update. This contained new Pokemon, new items and TMs, new voices for Pokemon, and this cool spirit palette for Iron Valiant. The main feature of the 9.2.10 update was the rework of quests into research. You'll see that if you open up your inventory in survival, there is now a new tab with an exclamation mark, which you might recognize as the icon from the old quest editor from previous versions of Pixelmon. Research completely replaces quests and completely changes how they work. It's not obtained by talking to NPCs, or at least not always. You can now also obtain it just by exploring, such as coming across a new structure, interacting with a Pokestop, or even by playing the game during specific times of the year. There are often multiple stages in research to complete, which can each give rewards along the way, and completing research and obtaining these rewards is always done through this tab in your inventory. And that means no more having to remember where the NPC that gave you that quest was, or by trapping them in holes so they don't get lost. Pixelmon also added this Professor Wisteria, who appears in these dialogue scenes and for some of the research will help explain the exposition or concepts of the research. Research gives out a lot of rewards, so you definitely want to make use of the new research feature as much as you can, especially because things like Mega Evolution and Dynamax are now obtained via research. Research is also completely data packable, so you'll be able to add your own research or even edit the research that exists. This update also reworked the growth mechanic in Pixelmon, which has been made a bit simpler and is now just referred to as a Pokemon size. There's still a wide variation on how big or small a Pokemon can get, but when you catch a Pokemon, you'll see in its summary screen its size is only referred to as large or small. There's also the new structure, the Meteorite, and Pixelmon's own variations of the Chessboat. The Meteorite only spawns in the Badlands biomes, and as you can see, starts the Dynamax phenomenon research. The chessboats are all made of the berry woods that Pixelmon adds, or the wood types from trees in Ultra Space. If you need more options for biome mods, this update also adds support for Alex's Caves, Biospherical Expansion, and Mystic's Biomes. And finally, the last change to cover is the addition of this scroll bar for move descriptions. So that brings us to the end of the updates to the alpha versions of Pixelmon. Thanks for watching. Let me know which out of all these features and reworks you like the most, and stay posted for a future video covering Pixelmon's beta versions. See ya.